What's up, everybody? Welcome to the post-Christmas, pre-New Year's last Two Buck Sports podcast of 2023. I am your co-host, Rusty Buckets, checking in once again from Martin, Tennessee, home of the Skyhawks, where it is a bit chilly here. Drew, welcome to the podcast, sir. My esteemed, infamous colleague, Drew Gann, on the podcast tonight. How are you, sir?
What is up, Buckets? I'm here in North Mississippi, the homeland, God's promised land here, just south of where you're at, across the border into Mississippi. It is chilly here. It's one of those days. It's been one of those days where if the wind would stop, boy, it'd just be great. But the wind's a little nipply, as Clark Griswold once said. And so we're hanging down. We're holding down the fort here in North Mississippi. We had a good Christmas. I told you last week Christmas was over, and I was like, all right, let's get back into a routine. Let's get back to work. Let's start to have some patterns about our day. My wife looked at me today. I came home for lunch, and she's a school teacher, so she's out for another week. And she just looked at me and she said, "Hey, honey, what day is it?" I was like, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're talking about that today at work. Yeah, we're talking about that today at work. I couldn't make up my mind if it was Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Nobody really knew. We just knew it was the day and we were at work. And so
yeah, and it's weird because like we had Monday and Tuesday off since Christmas fell on a Monday. Instead of having Friday, Monday, we had Monday, Tuesday. And so like all week last week, like it wasn't up until about Tuesday or Wednesday that I even realized I had to work Friday. Yeah. And so yeah, yesterday was a little weird, but we're here.
Yeah. But we're here. We're in this thing. And your Memphis Grizzlies in the new NBA basketball season are now 4-0. All the other games don't count. Jaron was walking through the tunnel last night flashing at 4-0, 4-0, 4-0. Because one, Demetrius Jamel Morant is back playing professional basketball and cooking folks. You sent me that link today on Twitter, which was absolutely hilarious, about what the New Orleans Pelicans called Ja Morant, my dad.
Yeah. And so, it was a good game. And, my wife and I, we all as a family started watching the game, and then it became bedtime. So we migrated down to the bedroom to watch the last of the game. And so as it was shaking out in the fourth quarter, you're down by 15 going in the fourth quarter. I was like, this feels like the last game. And then you start chipping away. And I was like, now this really feels like the Jaws first game of the year. All the way to the point to where a tie ball game or down by one, and Ja drives to the basket with a chance to win. And I was like, this is the exact same play. They threw it in the back court, just like they did last week, last Tuesday. Last Tuesday. And he threw it in the back court, got a full head of steam, went to the rim. Just this time he missed and got fouled. There was a whole hoopla, and there was the last 2 minutes of that game took 45 minutes.
My gosh.
Yeah. And it was just replay after replay. And Jaron missed the second half of 2 free throws. The second one would have won it for the Grizzlies, but they hung on in overtime. And just like you said, they're 4-0. They don't seem to lose when they're playing with Ja Morant. And so they're going to face their biggest test tomorrow night.
For sure.
Because you go, and I believe it's at Denver. You play the defending champions in the Mile High City, but there's a chance that we lose tomorrow night, but it does not affect Ja's record.
Right.
Because on the injury report, he is questionable to play tomorrow night due to illness. I think that they are doing this. They're like, oh, well, our goal now is to let Ja Morant be undefeated. So we're just not going to let him play at Denver, or we'll probably lose anyways.
Right.
Yeah, just preserve Ja's perfect record despite the Grizzlies overall.
It was top to bottom a great team effort, particularly the second half. It's the second time in a week we've been down double digits at New Orleans and came back and won. We were down 17 last night, and it just never really looked like we got rattled. We weren't playing great there for a while. We finished 23% from 3 last night. Just wasn't shooting the ball exceptionally well, but we just kept chipping away, making those hustle plays, making those. Marcus Smart we were talking about him earlier, was very pesky last night.
Great in the fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah.
Just he hit big shots, and on defense, he was an absolute menace.
And same with Vince Williams, man. Like, we've got the grind father and the grind son now, the grandson of Tony Allen, Vince Williams Jr., man, just stepping up, making play after play. Especially, like, there was a stretch in the fourth quarter where I saw it on Twitter today. I meant to send it to you. It was like 8 or 12 plays in a row that were made either by Marcus Smart or Vince Williams, and they influenced it somehow, whether it was a steal or assist or a deflected pass or forcing a turnover down the stretch. Like, those guys stepped up in a major way. And to see Marcus hit that big three when Ja hit that cross-court pass, and he splashed that in the corner to the oop that Marcus Smart threw Ja, and Ja hit the little celly that's been talked about all day. That's just strictly just a New Orleans dance. It was an LSU New Orleans dance that he was doing in New Orleans to rub it in New Orleans' face, that he just bodied him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was a very nice game. I mean, we've kind of got a trend going here that I wish that maybe it's just New Orleans, because the other two games we've won, and won pretty handedly. But going to New Orleans, they kind of bookend this first 4-game stretch with Ja. Both kind of had the same kind of pattern, where you got out to a lead in the first quarter, but then the Grizzlies were outscored by 18 points in the second and third quarter combined, to go into the fourth quarter being down by 13 points. And then obviously tied it in the fourth quarter, and then ended up winning by 1 point late. It was really 4 points, because CJ McCollum, former certified Grizz killer, hit a meaningless 3 as the time expired. I just need to talk about CJ McCollum for a minute, because I've spent my whole life, you grow up and you're just like, nothing is scarier than the boogeyman. Like, he's in my bed, he's under my bed, he's in my closet. Like, you're scared of the boogeyman. And then you just wake up one day and you're, 13, 14 years old, and you're just like, you know what? That was really stupid of me. There's obviously no such thing as a boogeyman. And that's kind of what we found out that CJ McCollum was all this time. It was like, he's really not that bad, because in back-to-back games, you're talking about how the first Pelicans game and the last Pelicans game mirror imaged each other so much. In both of those games, CJ McCollum forgot how to shoot in the crunch time. He could have won both of those games with a shot. In both games, he has missed threes worse than any I've ever seen him miss, including missing 2 free throws late in that game last night. And they, like, one hit the front end of the rim and one hit the back right portion of the rim and didn't even bounce towards the basketball court. He missed it so bad. Like, just an absolute buffoonery from CJ McCollum. And that's, that just goes to show you that's what happens when you play daddy,
Yeah, that's it.
I think to this day I probably couldn't beat my dad in hoops, just because it's psychological. When you play your dad or your big brother, it becomes psychological. It's like Tennessee playing Florida. It's like, they'll never beat Florida. Why would we?
Yeah, 100%. So. And Drew, we can talk about this some more too. But like, Ja's first week back, he was the NBA Player of the Week. I mean, stepped in and made an immediate impact. And if he had only been suspended for 24, I think he'd be one of the top vote getters for the NBA All-Star team and for a plethora of, NBA postseason awards. But he can't win any.
It doesn't matter for All-Star game, right? I mean, I'm sure voters, and because that is voted on by the public and by the coaches. But
they can make him ineligible because of his suspension, just like he has for postseason awards.
Yes. I don't think that the number of games matter for it. There's a rule for it, I guess, for postseason awards. I don't think there's a rule for it for NBA All-Star. Because, for instance, you remember like LeBron missed a ton of the first half of a season one year, and Steph, but the fans, they're so popular amongst fans that they win the fan vote every year, despite whether they play or not. Anthony Davis has done it before, just because the Lakers fan is so ginormous, the fan base. And so I don't think he'll be the only way he could possibly be an All-Star is to have like a landslide fan vote, because that's only part of it. Really, the fan vote only decides the starters.
Because what I was thinking of is the rest rule, like because there's only so many games that you can rest and miss and still be an all-star and eligible for that sort of stuff. I know that the suspension was too long for postseason awards like MVP or DPOI or anything like that.
And I'll tell you, like, I don't think Josh should be an all-star. And the reason why I think Josh should not be an all-star is because I think Desmond Bane should, and you're not getting both. And so every vote that would have been placed for Ja Morant by fans, they should place that vote for Desmond Bane. Put Desmond Bane in the All-Star. He probably doesn't have enough to win a fan vote to get a starting spot. I would bet my house on it. But the voter turnout should come, and it should be overwhelming for Desmond Bane. He should be an All-Star. He should be a coach's selection for a bench spot in the All-Star game.
And what's wild is there are people that are still saying that he is not a max contract player, that he was not worth that max deal that we gave him. And
he is a max contract player. You know why I know that? Because he got a max contract. You know.
But I was reading on Twitter.com, and people were talking about, like, there was just a lot of the Grizz Twitters were eviscerating these guys that were posting on there that, like, still Desmond Bane is not a max contract player. Clearly tell me that you don't watch enough basketball, because any game you watched of Desmond Bane, particularly of late, the guy is absolutely lethal. When he put Matthews on roller skates, broke both ankles and both knees the other night, just with that little filthy hezzy, watch him hit these deep threes game after game. He's stepping up, and he's we weren't losing in spite of Desmond Bane's best efforts. In a game earlier this year, he tied for second for the most points in franchise history. The guy is worth every penny that we spent on him, and he's only getting better. He's still young. He's still got a lot of good basketball ahead of him. He's only getting better. He's slimmed up a lot this year. Him and David Roddy both clearly spent time with a nutritionist and a health coach to try and improve their bodies so that they could really push it this year. And it shows. He's knocking down shots and being athletic and driving, and he's not getting hurt. And if he can stay healthy, man, like he is the sky's the limit this season for Desmond Bane.
And what's unfortunate about the All-Star game situation is for Grizzlies fans, like you don't get the casuals. Everybody knows Ja, obviously. And everybody seems to respect Jaren now because he won Defensive Player of the Year. But the casual NBA fan is not familiar with Desmond Bane. But Desmond Bane is currently averaging 25 points per game. That's 16th in the NBA in a per game basis. He is shooting. He's playing 35 minutes a game. He's played 28 games. He is shooting 46% from the field, 38% from three, and 86% from the free throw line. And that 3-point percentage is going to go up. That's low for him. So he's got a serious chance of being a 50, 40, 90 guy. It has not necessarily reflected towards wins, but that's a roster construction thing. When you're so top heavy, the Lakers never win without LeBron. The Warriors never win without Steph. The Sixers, God help them if they ever lose Embiid, or the Bucks ever lose Giannis. And so just when you've got all that money tied up in a superstar or three superstars, then the rest of your bench suffers. And so Desmond Bane was allowed to blossom into for real NBA fans who pay attention to the game and watch all games. They will know what Desmond Bane is and how important he was to this team, because without Bane and Ja, we're looking like the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. And also without aggressive Jaren Jackson Jr., because last night down the stretch in the fourth quarter and overtime, he kind of took that game over, especially when they started putting smaller players on him to defend him. Like, Jaren stepped up and showed that he is a killer. Like, when Jaren takes over a ball game, he is a matchup nightmare, because he's too big for a 5, or he's too quick for a 5. He's too big for a 3. 4s often can't keep up with him either. He truly is a unicorn. The guy can shoot from deep. He can stretch the floor. He can post up. And last night down the stretch, he only finished with 19. It's kind of a pedestrian line for him, especially as of late. It's the first time we didn't go 30, 20, 20 in our big three since Ja came back in those 4 games. But he had some clutch buckets. He missed the back half of those free throws, but he sunk that first one to tie the ball game.
And he short-armed the second one.
And he did.
He got a little tight.
But he made up for it in overtime. And because there was about 4 straight possessions where he poured buckets in because they didn't have an answer for him. And aggressive Jaren Jackson Jr. is what makes us better. Ja is great, and I think Ja is facilitating a lot of this growth of Jaren Jackson Jr. But as long as Tripp stays aggressive like this, we're going to be a tough out down the stretch.
Well, and the thing about Jaren is his personality kind of reminds me of like a Marc Gasol personality. And for people who have just started keeping up with the Grizzlies just because we talk about them all the time or only hear about the Grizzlies from us, then this won't make any sense to you, but just bear with me. But Marc Gasol was the anchor of one of the greatest defenses in basketball for several years, defensive player of the year. And offensively, he was extremely skilled, but he was so passive. He was kind of that European style. This isn't Jaren, but Mark was such that European style. You think of the Popovich Spurs, where it was always them is greater than me. Find the better shot. Don't look for your own shot. And for teams that a lot of times when you're playing with guys like Tony Allen and James Ennis and a bunch of not very good offensive players, we really needed Mark to step up, and he just continued to play the offense and wouldn't put his foot down and say, I'm the alpha, I'm the best shot maker, I'm 7 foot tall, I'm going to shoot.
It was mind-numbingly frustrating.
Right. And so that's kind of what the Grizzlies fans think of when they see Jaren. It's like, Jaren, you are tall, long-armed, and can shoot, can handle the ball, can finish with both hands in traffic at the rim. Like, just ask for it, And I get wanting him to do that. However, when you've got somebody like Ja who's so ball dominant, you've got options that it allows a more free flowing. Like, there's more options to score on this team than there ever was with any team that Marc Gasol was on. On our favorite teams, you had Zebo on the block.
He can score two ways.
Yeah.
A fadeaway and that little hook.
You had an undersized point guard, and then you had Mark. And so what Jaren does and what he is so good at, and I've heard the stats. I'm going to paraphrase them, but isolation buckets, he leads the NBA in efficiency when it comes to isolation buckets. And so when he gets ahead of steam and can get in the paint and work one-on-one, he is getting his shot every time, and he is making it, or he's getting fouled, or both. And so that's what they got into when it came to crunch time. The Pelicans are extremely, extremely vulnerable to folks like Jaren Jackson because their two big guys are Zion Williamson and Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas Valanciunas, Grizzlies fans love. He was one of us for several years. But even then, we knew what his weakness was, and he's kind of a boat anchor on defense. He needs to be in front of the basket. He doesn't move very well laterally, or doesn't move his feet extremely well to stay in position. And so that is a Jaren Jackson Jr. recipe. And when it came down to it, they were subbing out Zion Williamson when it came down to crunch time, and there was like a dead ball in between every single play because it was fouls and whatnot. And every single time they would sub out Zion Williamson and bring in Dyson Daniels. And at that point, when you've got a guy like John Morant, who is as much of a highlight factor he is, and as fun as he is to watch with the ball in his hands, he is equally as smart when it comes to playing basketball and just savvy and IQ. And he knew immediately. He was like, all right, we're going to Jaren. You remember last Tuesday, Ja's first game back, he had 9 seconds on the clock, and Ja was like, we need to go to Jaren. And everybody's like, nah, man, this is your moment. But he knows where that weakness is at. And so, yes, I would love for Jaren to call for the ball more. But I kind of default that to Ja a little bit too. He is, whereas Mark, he had the cachet. His pecking order on that roster lineup was number one if he wanted the ball, especially as the years went on further down the grit and grind age. As grit and grind got a little older, Marc Gasol got a little higher up because Zebo kind of started going down just a little bit, especially in Fizdale years, and that's a podcast of itself. If you want some rage, and so Mark should have demanded it. That's what Mark should have done. Jaren doesn't have to because he can default to Ja. Ja is the first superstar that the city of Memphis has ever had.
Right.
And so he defaults to Ja, and I get that, and I like that everybody plays in their role, and they seemingly mesh together really well. And when Jaren's moment was needed last night, he stepped up, and he stepped up big. And Jaren's biggest thing that he's always been knocked on is foul trouble. We're working on second year here, where he has virtually stayed out of foul trouble. He's averaging 32 minutes a game right now for the Grizzlies. He's on the court,
huge. Yeah.
And when he's on the court, you see what happens. He wins Defensive Player of the Year, and the offense has another option that just cannot be guarded.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then, you talk about Mark. You're right, because he would try and default to guys that he didn't need to. We needed Mark to be that killer that Jaren can be, and that Mark could be at times. There's nothing more frustrating than that. But what's fun, you talk about like role players here, like seeing guys step up. Like John them has made everybody better, except for one lottery pick that we'll talk about at some point, I'm sure, with Zaire Williams. And just like it's bad. He's bad. He's bad.
And like I said, roster management has become a lot harder with max contract guys. And if you can capitalize in the draft, it means more for teams that have max guys than anybody else.
Sure.
Because they're the most reasonable contracts on your team.
Sure, 100%.
They're always more reasonable than free agents.
Yeah.
Except for like league minimum guys. And so you're playing Zaire for two reasons right now. One, you're still down Marcus Smart. You're still down Luke Kennard. And two, maybe he can play one good game that you can put on film and because they're going to need to make a move.
Yeah, we need to make a move for sure.
Somebody out there needs to see that Zaire Williams has a pulse.
Yeah, because like you see on Twitter all these trade scenarios where we trade Zaire for a good piece back, but like nobody's going to do that because he's trash right now. He had 2 points in 12 minutes last night and multiple turnovers, and he was just a non-starter last night.
Well, there's this thing, and I can't remember who. I want to say maybe it was John Hollinger, who is now of the Athletic, but he was a front office guy at the Grizzlies for a long time during the grit and grind era. And I believe I'm going to attribute it to him, and I hope if I'm wrong that somebody catches me and corrects me. But it was John Hollinger who wrote about this because he started his career as a journalist. He was an ESPN. He was one of the first analytics guys in basketball. And the Grizzlies took him out of an analytics position at ESPN, I think, and put him into a front office role to use his algorithms or whatever. And he talked about the second draft. And so when you look at guys like Zaire Williams, he was one of the youngest drafted players of that class. And so what you look for is a lot of times at the front of the draft, you have bad teams that are poorly managed, that are poorly run, that are develop players poorly. Look at Denver. Okay. So say Denver last year, they drafted Jay Ivey with the 3rd, 4th, 5th pick, something like that. And he'll be on a 4-year contract. And say Denver, he never does anything with Denver. He makes it through his contract, and they're like, we're not going to re-up with you. All these other teams looking around, and this is what I hope for with Zaire, is that they look around and be like, we saw that guy. He had a ton of promise in college. He's got the frame. He's a good kid with a good hand on his shoulder and seems to work hard. So we're going to give him a shot. And when his contract expires or they trade for him or whatever, and they're like, it's almost like the second draft. That's what they call it, second draft. And so, you look at, you just kind of take a bet that the other team didn't know what they're doing, and the player is still 21, 22, 23 years old with plenty of time to develop and flourish under your leadership. And that's what you kind of hope when you see guys like LaRavia and Zaire Williams and, Conchar's probably too old, but, David Roddy, that's certainly what the Philadelphia 76ers thought when they just picked up Kenny Lofton for a two-way deal. They think that, we can do it,
So hopefully somebody will take that same flyer on Zaire and give us something good in return, because we do need a little bit of help. We still need a little bit of wing help. Definitely need some help in the post. X is, this is a pro Xavier Tillman podcast, but is he a guy that can help you in a late playoff run?
I seem to think that he is more beneficial in those. He is shown in for 2 years now that he's more beneficial in the postseason.
I guess you're right. That's very true,
season,
because without Steve-O last year, he played some big minutes for us.
Yeah, and so trade deadline approaching. We'll talk. Well, I guess it's not approaching anytime soon, but as we start talking about the Grizzlies more, we start identifying some different things that we as nobodies think that the Grizzlies should do just as fans, and I think they need to make a trade for a big, and I think that they are going to have to do like one of those 2-for-1 or 3-for-2 kind of things where we're giving away more players than we're receiving, because you're going to have to make room for guaranteeing Vince Williams' contract, because he can only play 50 games.
You're going to have to do that.
And so you're going to have to open up a roster spot for Vince Williams.
And, it's looking more and more like after the first of the year, we might get Brandon Clark back. He's looking good on IG. He's rehabbing.
He's still on the active roster. He's still taking up a roster spot too. Right. So.
And so he's a guy, we've talked about him as a possible trade piece, and he may be, but he also is a big that we can use, because he's played some big minutes for us and got us some big boards and big puts down. We're not really in position
to trade bigs at this time.
And so we need to trade some wing players or some guards for a big. I don't know, man. Like, just watching him start getting some of that bounce back, it's been good for my soul to see Brandon Clark starting to get healthy, because I'm a big Brandon Clark fan. He seems like a good dude. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a hustler. His game is very two-dimensional. He gets rebounds and he dunks. That's about it. But man, some of those points are big. Those highlights are fun. He's a guy that's easy to root for. And so I hope BC's continuing to make that good recovery. Again, there's been a few videos that have floated out on IG of him bouncing back, but man, wouldn't he help us in the post right now? Especially like a lineup with him at a 5 and Jaren at 4. Then you got Marcus, Dez, and Ja. Like, you talk about a lineup of death, man. That's some athleticism that you're gonna have a hard time with.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about how he could help us if he's healthy. And so I think they'll take their time getting him back, and hopefully, best case scenario, he can come back All-Star break or MLK Day or, somewhere around in there, and he can start getting his sea legs back, and maybe by postseason, he's really close to healthy. I mean, we'll see. Aaron Rodgers kind of showed that he from an so like 40% of me thinks that Aaron Rodgers is full of crap.
Yeah.
And he was never planning on playing anyways. He can say he's clear if he wants to, but I think it may have been a little bit of publicity stunt too. So, Aaron Rodgers thinks he knows better than everybody, and so he wasn't going to, I mean, what kind of player says, if the Jets can go to the playoffs, I'll come back? Like, that's a loaded bet, they weren't going to the playoffs. They weren't sniffing the playoffs.
No, not even close. No way. But
I tell you right now, Rusty, if I win the lottery, I'll buy you a truck.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's the same kind of promise. Yeah, man. I'm gonna start looking at colors right now. But yeah, our best basketball is ahead of us. Analytics show that we're going to go 57-0 down the stretch. We'll never lose again. We'll finish as the 2 or 3 seed in the Western Conference, and we'll be right back where we were. Well, but when reality sits in, we got a tough schedule ahead of us. Then it starts tomorrow night at Denver. That'll be a great test. No job, but it'll be a great test of where we are. And then it doesn't get real easy. We've got some big road games coming up. I'm pulling up our schedule right here.
I actually was going there, so I've got it pulled up. So, the first 4 games for Johns, you had bookended games, but on the road at the Pelicans, and in the middle you had a home game against the Pacers and a road game against the Hawks. And so it's not exactly a daunting schedule, although the Hawks and the Pelicans have pretty good records. They were just good matchups for the Grizzlies as well.
Right.
But then you're going to go to Denver, to the Clippers, and then home against the Kings, and then
the calendar turns over.
Yeah, then calendar turns over, and you got Spurs at home, Raptors at home, at Lakers.
Then there's a stretch there. Lakers, Suns, Mavs, Clippers, and then I'm going to be at that game on the 13th. I surprise my nephews again every year for Christmas. More of a Christmas present for me than them.
Oh, yeah.
I always get them Grizz tickets. We're going to that Knicks game on Saturday the 13th.
Oh, that's a good game.
Big game. Get to see Jalen Brunson, get to see the Grizz. It'll be a fun night. Super stoked about that.
Yeah, so this stretch here at Nuggets, at Clippers, home against the Kings on New Year's Eve, that's a stretch where you're really going to see kind of where you shake out in the Western Conference. If you can go win 2 of those games, assuming Ja plays tomorrow night, you go win 2 of the 3 games, 2 road games against Denver and the Los Angeles Clippers and at home against the Kings. If you win 2 of those 3 games, man, there is no real. You're just really fighting against time at that point. You just hope you have time to get in
what
there,
you need.
because
and honestly,
there's nothing's going to stop you if you can, barring injuries, if you can win 2 of these next 3 games.
We're 5 games. We're 5 games out of the play-in. Like, we're right in the thick of this thing. Like, I
was gonna reset that as well.
We're not an afterthought like we were. Like, I'll let you get to it just a second. Just like a week or 2 ago, right before Ja came back, ESPN had us at less than a 1% chance of making the playoffs. And
that's analytics,
Yeah, but still, shocker, our best player is coming back, and all of a sudden we're 5 games out of the play-in, looking healthy, looking strong, looking like a tough out. Because I don't care what I get mad about it every time I think about it. I don't care what that ESPN top 100 says. Ja is much better than the top 30 player in the league. Ja is a top 10 NBA basketball player. He comes back, and shocker, the Grizz are good again.
Yeah. So Grizzlies are on a 5-game winning streak. They're now 4.5 games out of the 10 seed. I believe we were 6.5 out last week when we were talking, and 7 games out of the 6th seed, which is not which bypasses the play-in, obviously. Right. And so they are 10-19. That's 29 games. Quick math, tell me you got 53 games left in the season to make up some games. I mean, that's doable.
Because one of the things that's going to change, Drew, we're 2-11 at home, and last year we had the best record in the NBA at home.
36-5 or 35. That's
not going to stand. Yeah. That's not going to stand. You got Ja back. There's going to be a buzz in the forum again, because those games were dead. They were duds before Ja got there, right? I mean, we'll be honest, they were. Yeah. Ja's back. Those games are going to be loud. They're going to be electric. We're not going to finish the season below 500 at home. We don't lose games at the Grindhouse. We just had a tough start to the year, so we're 2-11.
It kind of stinks that he comes back in 3, 4, 5. 5 of his first 7 games are on the road. Mm-hmm. And then calendar turns over. You've got 2 home games. So 2 of 7 games being at home.
That's
your
tough.
First 7 games. So yeah, they'll get rolling. I'm not worried at all at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got a lot of great basketball ahead of us. A lot of good things are happening. We're everybody's starting to get healthy. Like, we're not far from having Luke Kennard back, at full speed. Marcus Smart looked very healthy last night. He moved well. He didn't look like he was slowed down much by that injury. You start getting guys like Derrick Rose healthy. You start getting our team healthy down the stretch. I mean, watch out, Western Conference. We coming, man. We coming.
Yeah. We do need to talk some football, because one of our football teams plays this weekend.
Yeah.
And that is my team. The Ole Miss Rebels go to Atlanta, Georgia to play Penn State Nittany Lions, whatever a Nittany is, in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Vegas, according to ESPN Bet, which we all know how we feel about how our cable network and owner of college sports having a sports book feels, but I digress. They have the Penn State Nittany Lions, a 4.5-point favorite in this game, which to me seems kind of wild.
That is a little wild.
It kind of feels like, it kind of feels like a slap in the face. Like, they may know something that I don't.
Right.
Because so far Ole Miss has only had one player opt out of the Peach Bowl, and you look around college, the landscape altogether, there seems to be more opt-outs than opt-ins.
Right.
It's more like you need to write articles about who has decided to play in the bowl game than who has decided not to. Yeah. Penn State has lost 2 or 3 contributors. One is going to be like a first-round pick off their defensive line. And so, I mean, yeah, I'm excited. I don't really know. I'm going to say Ole Miss is going to win, obviously. Ole Miss is riding an all-time high right now. My man Walter Nolan gave me my first Christmas present of the year on Christmas Eve, deciding to commit to the Rebs, to come to the SIP and play defensive line for my Ole Miss Rebels. And you're going to have Tyler Barron and Prince Yuma from Florida on the outside of that defensive line, Walter Nolan directly in the middle of it, and they are just going to wreak havoc. I'm not going to go as far as to say, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We have a very important bowl game coming up, but
Because they matter all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm
You're
not
right.
going to
You're
get
right.
ahead of
You're
myself. These always matter. The good ones matter, not your Mayo Bowl game. But I'm not going to say that Ole Miss is going to win a national championship next year. I will not say it. We may lose in the championship game, but we may.
It's getting deep in here.
So, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people wondering where Ole Miss is getting their money, and all I've got to say is, I don't know.
I don't know,
but I like it. So it's obviously you've got this mindset, and Ole Miss went 10-2 this year. Your two losses are at Alabama and at Georgia. Okay, it was obvious in both of those games that you can be 10-2 good and not sniff a national championship. And it seems like Lane Kiffin decided, what are we here for? We're going for broke. And he rallied the troops and he said, I've got a third-year returning quarterback. I've got a third-year returning running back. I've got pieces all on this offense that are really proven SEC teams, SEC players. I need a defense. Do you want to participate in a playoff? Do you want to really compete in the college football? If so, I need a defense. And it seems that they were given a blank checkbook, and Pete Golden went to town. And if Pete Golden's known for one thing,
it's recruiting.
It's recruiting. I came on this podcast this year and said I thought I undervalued his coaching because I always thought he just got a job because he was an amazing recruiter. Turns out he's both. He's got the recruiting chops, and he put together a heck of a defense this year with the players that he had. Just didn't have the hogs. And so I'm excited about next year already. But we've got a bowl game this Saturday. Win, lose, or draw. This season is a success. I hope they win because I hope they win every game. But I hope they win because I would love to see an 11th win. Ole Miss has never seen an 11th win in a season before. Yeah. And so that's why I want to win. I think it's obvious that Ole Miss cares. Bowl games are about who cares, who participates in the game. Ole Miss has had one opt-out. A senior defensive lineman decided he was going to prepare for the Senior Bowl rather than go to the Peach Bowl. A guy that doesn't really have many draft prospects anyways. It's kind of confusing. But I think they care. I think that they're really trying to use this game to solidify. They've had their name in the press a lot this last 2 weeks with transfer portal guys and the splashes they made with new players coming off of a really great season that they've had. And I think they really want to put an exclamation point on it and really put a bow on it and an accelerant on the future of this program. And if you go and beat a perennial top 15 school out of a major conference on the 30th of this year in the Peach Bowl, Access Bowl, I mean, you can't really script it any better going forward.
No, you really
what else
can't.
Can you tell a recruit?
Yeah.
We're not Alabama and Georgia, but we're the next best thing. And
right now,
if Alabama and Georgia's calling, you're probably not answering our phone calls anyways.
Right. I mean, that's a very logical place to end up. Ole Miss is definitely trending up, positive trajectory. And an Access Bowl win is only going to help that national brand awareness. Beating a team like Penn State that has another national brand awareness,
right?
I mean, it looks good.
Both teams have checkered pasts.
That's it. We're gonna leave that alone before we get this show canceled. Yeah, I mean, looking forward for State, we did well in the transfer portal in the early signing season. Finished with the top 30 class. We actually pulled some guys. Crystal balls and things are looking like Stonka Burnside is leaning towards coming to Mississippi State where he had originally committed. I think that'd be a huge get. JJ Harrell was a huge get for us out of high school. Kick and play. That's where we're taking wins where we can right now and getting some good high school recruits and getting being a top 30 class in Levy's first class is huge. We still got the late signing period coming up. Again, like Stonka hadn't committed. There's a few other guys that we're looking at.
Yeah, that's weird. That is weird because he sent in his paperwork. And so no coach in the right mind is going to say, no, you just don't. You're not going to commit on January 3rd and not leave us in the dark and miss out on everybody else. So there was a handshake agreement or something that said we won't leak it, but his paperwork is in at either Ole Miss or Mississippi State. And I just can't believe it hadn't leaked out yet. That's why I think it's Mississippi State.
Yeah. Keeping it really, really close, which would be a phenomenal recruiting class at the receiver position, which we desperately needed help at, for a couple transfer quarterbacks coming in, kid from Baylor. We need some help at the receiver position. We lost, Xavier went to LSU, and we were losing a lot of talent out there.
Is Austin Williams still there?
No, he finally 11 years later, he's finally graduated. This was our first season without 8.5, and so he's out probably selling insurance somewhere and making it.
Him and Jake Mangum.
That's it, man. Just selling insurance. Hey, Mangum's he recently got moved. He was with the Mets.
Marlin? Is he in Marlin?
Marlins now? Yeah, he's in the Marlins AA now. But yeah, State's looking, trending positively. Basketball's looking good. We're back on our winning ways in SEC basketball, or in college basketball. SEC hadn't started yet. Got some great news out of Tolu Smith, looking like he might be coming back sooner than thought from that foot injury. And you add that piece to a team that's already playing really well. Josh Hubbard is one of the top 10 freshmen in the country. That kid can just flat hoop to be so short. Things are looking good.
You got to bring that into it
comparatively, but things are looking good for the Bulldogs basketball team. That's for sure.
Yeah. Ole Miss is still undefeated. Nothing's changed. I mean, still amazing. Beat Southern Miss in Biloxi.
Yeah.
Last weekend.
Although, did you see it? Like when it first got posted to ESPN, it was posted that Ole Miss had lost.
No, I didn't.
I saw it and I was freaking out because obviously I didn't watch the game. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh! And then when I got on Twitter, I was going to see what happened, and I saw that it was an error.
Yeah. Your top 25 ranked Ole Miss Rebels play the Bryant Bulldogs on New Year's Eve at 3 p.m. Nobody will watch that game because you'll be watching football, which I guess we can pick some playoff games real quick.
Yeah.
Then you start the season on the road at number 6 Tennessee on January the 6th. So let's talk. Let's just run through win-loss on bowl games. Let me pull it up here. So we'll start with. I'll just hit the high spots. Do you care anything? Do you have any opinions on Arizona, Oklahoma?
Not really.
Arizona 2.5-point favorite. Clemson, Kentucky play Friday, December the 29th in the Gator Bowl.
Feels like a Kentucky win.
Oregon State, Notre Dame. Who cares? Missouri, Ohio State, Cotton Bowl Classic Friday the 29th in Dallas, Texas at Jerry World. Ohio State is a 3-point favorite against Missouri.
Give me the Tigers, man.
You've rocked with them all year. I have to give you credit. Yeah.
I'm hanging with them one more time. Ohio State lost their quarterback. He is inexplicably transferring to Syracuse. Undoubtedly, the writing was on the wall that he wouldn't be there next year. That's clearly what happened. That Missouri defense is legit. Those two, they got two really good receivers. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They're a tough team.
They've got the best running back in the SEC too.
Absolutely. And
Cody Schrader's 1,500 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns.
I mean, kid is just a machine in the backfield. And so, I mean, it's a great opportunity for them to stamp a really, really good season. You're right. I rode with them all year. I've been high on Missouri all year, so I'm going to stick with them one more time. Give me them Tigers.
Yeah, I like that pick. I will actually be rooting for Missouri in that game.
Always. You always root against Ohio State.
The 30th, we've talked about Ole Miss, Penn State. Are you picking Penn State?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Of course. Auburn, Maryland. Auburn's a 7-point favorite in the Music City Bowl in Nashville, Tennessee.
I mean, probably Auburn, just because they're SEC.
The big one on the 30th, Toledo, Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl. The Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl.
That's going to be tough to pick.
Wyoming is a 3-point favorite.
Give me the Cowboys.
And Georgia, Florida State is actually on the 30th. Both of these teams. I mean, there's no Brock Bowers. There's no anybody from Florida State playing. Georgia is a 19-point favorite in the Orange Bowl is in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. Man, I'm going to be pulling hard for Florida State in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, give me the Noles. I want them money line. I want them against the spread, and that's just what I want. No, I don't think that's going to happen because
Georgia's finna beat the brakes off of Florida State.
No, I mean
this
what's
has
his name? The quarterback. He said he's coming back next year.
Oh yeah,
Carson
Beck.
So he's coming back. So I'm assuming he's playing, and then Florida State's going to be playing.
That kid from Covington, Tennessee.
Niedermeyer or whatever his name is.
Yeah, and they mustered like 65 yards of offense against Louisville. Man, like this has got Georgia-Hawaii written all over it, where Georgia just beat Hawaii to a pulp. Like they're going to come in, they're going to be pissed because they lost. Like this, Kirby's mad. They don't want to be there, but he's going to have those dudes hyped, ready to play that game, go out and show them they made a mistake. And Florida State is going to be a lifeless victim by the end of the night. 19 might not be enough. I'm taking dogs outright, man.
Yeah. The first, just quick thoughts. We're trying to wrap this up. Wisconsin, LSU 10-point favorite. Tigers. Former Gator Bowl. Go Tigers. Liberty, Tigers. Oregon. Who cares? No Bo Nix.
Still Oregon.
Iowa, Tennessee with no Milton. Milton will not overthrow the Hawkeyes.
Right. That's it. But
they're going to play that I'm Aliva guy, the former number one recruit. Apparently.
The question is
$80,000, $800,000.
The question is, will Iowa have more punting or offensive yards in that game?
I hope Iowa beats the crap out of Tennessee.
Playoff
games. That's the last thing we'll talk about. Alabama, Michigan. Michigan, a 1.5-point favorite in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all.
Man, listen, like this is a game. This is a classic Nick Saban game where they're coming in, especially that now they're the underdogs.
They're going to win this whole thing.
I mean, they're going to win the whole daggone thing. I told you last year after the Georgia game, I said when David Pollock said that Georgia is now the class of college football, and Nick Saban did that side eye look down at the floor, I told you. I think I texted you and I said on this podcast, Alabama's finna win the national championship, and they finna do it. They're going to beat Michigan, and it might be close early, but Alabama's going to lean on them late. This is rat poison. This is Vegas's way of making sure Alabama wins by making them an underdog. Get out of here, man. Tied by 90. They got a chance of losing this game.
Well, you remember what happened. Michigan had an incredible season last year. They beat Ohio State. They ran through the Big Ten like they've done the last few years. Then they ran up against TCU, and TCU drilled them. Mm-hmm. No, that was a close game. But it was very high scoring. They couldn't stop them.
TCU jumped out like 21 points early, and Michigan came back.
And then just turned into a home run derby.
That's it.
I think Alabama wins, but I'm going to tell you, I kind of want Michigan to win because I love a heel, and Jim Harbaugh is the best heel in college football. Yeah. I love it. Did you see the picture floating around today of Jim Harbaugh and Nick Saban with Mickey Mouse in the middle at Disneyland in California? It was great.
Oh my God. No,
it's perfect. They're both just Saban is just not happy to be there, and Jim Harbaugh is just cheesing it up. So, give me Michigan. I kind of just want to see them say, throw the double birds to all of society and just do it. I don't think if I was putting money on it, I'm taking Bama, especially since they're underdogs.
Yeah, Bama by 90.
Yeah, Texas, Washington, and the All-State Sugar Bowl, and the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. Texas is a 4-point favorite, according to ESPN Bet.
So I've been back and forth on this game. Initially, when these first came out, I'm like, Texas is going to win this game. It's going to be a slugfest. This game has potential to be one of the best college football games of the year. These offenses can score. These defenses are questionable. Like, they can put some points up. This one might be like, I think that was Michigan TCU last year. It was like 61-56 or something just wild. Yeah. This could very easily be that. And I've been high and bullish on Texas this entire time. But I'm changing my mind.
Oh, really?
I'm going to take the Huskies. I don't know, man. I believe in Michael Penix. Maybe this is partly a homer pick because of Dylan Johnson. It feels destiny-ish, man. They snuck their way in. They played really good football. They beat Oregon twice, a good Oregon team.
Despite being undefeated, they were
counted out
heavy underdogs in the Pac-12 championship.
They were was it a 10-point?
Already beaten.
Yeah. It was they were a 10-point underdog, and all they did was come out and punch Oregon in the mouth.
An undefeated conference champion has bulletin board material.
That's wild.
Yeah. And I don't it can only go two ways. This is a great game that Washington pulls out late, or they end up looking like those old Michigan State teams.
Right.
It's the only two ways it can go.
I mean, that's it.
I'm rooting in two different ways here. Like, to me, honestly, the most fun matchup for the title game has to include Texas, because the name cachet, Alabama, Texas, Michigan, Texas, that's sexy.
Mm-hmm.
However, I love Michael Penix. I love watching. I've watched a lot of Washington this year. I really root for them, and so I want Washington, and I want Washington to win.
Mm-hmm.
But just because that makes me feel good. But the matchup, Alabama Washington, doesn't really excite me.
They played that a couple years
Washington
ago.
Doesn't really excite me. But
Alabama Washington played in the playoffs a few years ago, and Alabama beat the absolute crap out of them. And it's a different team. It's Jake Browning is a different team, but like what bet? It's a rematch. The only team to beat Alabama this year is Texas. And it's like that draw alone tells me that if that game is
going
close,
to the SEC next year.
If that game is close, like there's going to be some questionable calls that might influence Texas to win that game.
There is no doubt at all that ESPN wants Alabama, Texas.
100%. That's going to
the same reason why Alabama and Texas are in the playoff.
That's it, man. And so if those games are close, you best believe Saban and Sarkisian are going to get those calls, man. And it's a bummer, because I would really like. I mean, I don't think it's Alabama's going to win the whole daggum thing. I don't care who they play. But I would really like to see what Michael Penix Jr. can do against him, because he's mobile, he's quick, he gives. Alabama's defenses have always struggled with mobile quarterbacks, and he's very mobile. He's got a great arm, good head on his shoulders. He doesn't turn the ball over. I'd love to see that.
Oh, I love it. And he goes for broke. He just chucks it.
And again, like, they don't belong there. Even though they're undefeated conference champs, they don't quote unquote belong there. And so why not, man? Crap, go for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I kind of. If I could pick a champion, I'd pick Washington, because it'd be poetic for the same reason Alabama and Texas facing off against each other, with Texas coming to the SEC. It'd be just as poetic for a Pac-12 team to finally win a game in the college football playoff in their last season. Like, it's like God has his last laugh,
That's it.
We do have one more thing to get to.
The closing of the show, right? Oh, God.
I said I wasn't going to touch it until after it was over. Ladies and gentlemen on YouTube.
Don't break it.
The League of Avengers has a new champion. I want you to... I haven't got my name plaque in yet, but I want you to count here. There's my name right here. That's one. Right here. That's two. And there will be one right here, which will be three. If you can also count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years that we've had this league, 3 of which the season ends and my name goes on the trophy. That's almost 50% of the time. Yeah. So there's either been 9 or 11 other people in the league that go home sad every year because your boy wins half the time. Yep. Don't call it a comeback. And I'm going to, we trained for this. We prepared for this. We're built for it. We're built for the long run. Jeez. Lots of people can say we saw adversity here at Waddle Vision. We saw adversity when we took the number 1 pick of the draft, and everybody laughed at that. Oh, it's collusion. It's just rigged that the commissioner would get the number 1 pick of the draft. Well, then the commissioner picked the wide receiver that decided to break his leg halfway through the season. Okay. And this is a 12-team league. There's 24 picks till I get to pick again. Rusty, you had 2 players before I had 2 players. Your 2 players obviously were not good enough, because my next 2 players and everybody else on my team pulled through for me. Not Darren Waller. He was my 6th pick of the draft. He came up limp. But who did come up big for me? My man, James Cook, last week with a 40-point performance. And this week, my man, Breece Hall. And I got to give a shout-out. There was a trade made. There's very few trades in the League of Avengers. I think we're all too stingy and we're all too skeptical of the other person. And this is probably a lesson to all of you people who want to make a trade in fantasy football. A trade between me and our good friend Brandon, a.k.a. Neezy Smith of Selmer, Tennessee. Decided to barter goods amongst our fantasy football teams, and I sent him one Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, who I was embarrassed to even have on my team as an Ole Miss fan. Hunter Henry, who started 2 weeks into the fantasy football season as the number one tight end in football. And so I decided to throw the dice a little bit. I traded Hunter Henry for my man Breece Hall, 1-for-1. Breece Hall had a terrible start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Henry was incredible. But Breece Hall ended the season incredibly well. He was a must start every single week in fantasy football. And Hunter Henry ended up being the 15th best tight end in football. My man Neezy finished in last place in the League of Avengers, and your boy finished in first.
Yep.
The name's on the trophy 3 times for a reason, Rusty. You know what that reason is? I am amazing. Nobody does it better, but a few people get lucky.
Yeah.
You know who got lucky last year, Rusty?
Me.
Rusty. So, So for the first time in 5 years, or the first time in 3 winners, the person who won did not repeat. Rusty, that was you. You
Mad Titans.
From
Mad
18,
Titans.
Yeah, 18 and 19, back-to-back winners. That was me. 2021, back-to-back winners. That was Hunter. 22, that was Rusty. 23, not Rusty.
The Mad Titans, man, we were counted out. We were one of the, when the league started, we were supposed to finish 9th or 10th, and we won the regular season. Doesn't matter. We fizzled out in the playoffs. Shout out to America's
team.
That's it, man. I needed 19 from AJ Brown, and he got me 10. And it's coming in, he had 23, 26, 33. I'm like, I got this in the bag. And because our commish decided to change the rules to apply to him, to where we only had 1 week playoffs this year instead of 2, the Mad Titans fizzled out in the first game and we lost. But we were going to finish in 3rd, and consolation prize, I guess we get the bronze trophy, the bronze medal.
You're not.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because I ain't
shots
getting
at the
nothing.
Commissioner.
I ain't getting nothing. I'm going to finish in 3rd, and we're going to bounce back next year.
Yeah. I honestly can't tell you what went wrong on that. I just restarted the league. I don't know. But I can tell you what, I made a conscious decision because I started to let everybody know, hey, I'm fixing it. But then I was like, you know what? If I change it from how it's been all season and win, I'll never hear the end of it. So we're letting it ride. And, what was said at the beginning of the season is how we're going to finish it.
Yep.
It ain't my fault that you decided to lose by a half a point.
Half a freaking point. I think I lost by 1. I think it was 1.2 is when I ended up losing by. And
so it was funny. I don't know if you saw yesterday, our man Zach Jones, who finished in 11th place this year.
Yeah.
Or 10th place. Rage dropped every single player on his team as soon as the season was over.
That's funny.
Zach Jones has a team that is solely made up of Patrick Mahomes, Alvin Kamara, and Tyreek Hill right now. He just rage quit just rage fired everybody on his team.
That's
so
funny.
He said starting new next year. So Rusty, this podcast has went on a little longer than we've been accustomed to lately. But it was jam-packed full of fun things to talk about. So no harm, no foul.
I've never needed a podcast like I needed it this week. So grateful that we were here. Grateful we could get here and banter for a little bit and hang out with you, buddy, man. Cheers to that. Drinking water,
Yeah.
Trying to stay hydrated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So catch us on the interwebs. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Watch us live on YouTube. The number 2 Bucks Sports Pod on all your platforms, on Instagram. With the holidays coming on, we're doing some traveling. We're doing some different stuff. We'll get you a podcast next week. I'm not going to promise it's going to be on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, but we will get you one. We will fit it in here. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. Hope everybody here, everybody listening, had a happy, Merry Christmas and a safe Christmas. And I hope Santa brought you all the gifts that you wanted. And I hope everybody has a happy and safe New Year's. We get into the 3rd calendar year of the 2 Bucks Sports Podcast. We've now almost spanned 3 different years. And so, Rusty, if you don't have anything else, we'll wind her down.
Yes, sir. Drew, hit me with that line as we head out of here, man. We're
Yeah,
gonna
Rusty.
get it rolling.
Play our music.
There it is.
And everybody have
Enjoy
a
it,
happy
fellas.
New Year.
Happy New Year's, guys.